Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl, and this is going to be episode 101 of my poker vlog. For this episode, I cover a 2-5 session that occurred at Orange City Racing Card Club. I briefly cover a little bit about some advantages between topping off and staying with a short stack, and you may notice the logo on the bottom right hand of the video, which of course is our sponsor. So let's hear a little bit about RadPoker.
Man, my dinner is delicious. How's yours?
Well, I can only afford bread because it's free, and I lost all my money playing poker.
Well, did you practice on RadPoker before your last session like I told you to?
No, I did not do that.
RadPoker is a free app where players get to compete in fast-paced heads-up poker matches. Well, how fast-paced? Each turn only gives you 6 seconds to act. About as fast as you are.
Again, that's not in the script. I feel like you like adding stuff in there.
And did you even comb your hair today?
Well, they're using the same joke as they did in the last movie.
Well, I've been reviewing my hand history with RadPoker to improve my games. I even won the cash cup, which earned me enough money to get this dinner and probably even dessert. I won my last game with this awesome hand. Why do I even keep you around?
Could I please just have one bite of your cake?
You can have some cake when you're a winner again.
On a little bit more serious of a note, I did get second place in the Cash Cup last week, which netted me $200. This week, I'm going for first place. Let me know how you do. All right, first hand of note. I'm in early position with King 10 of Hearts. I raised to $40. The player on my direct left calls, and one late position player calls as well. So we are 3 ways to a flop of 10, 7-4 rainbow, but 1 heart. As I'm first to act and I flop top pair, good kicker, I'm definitely going to size up here a bit. I do need some protection against all the overcards. Any card higher than a 10 that hits the turn that's not a king, I'm not going to feel too great about. So we're going to go 2/3 sizing with this one. I bet $80. Well, the middle position player decides to go all in for about $290, and then it folds back to me. This player had shown a decent amount of action previously. He recently lost a few hands, so I think it's likely he's just spewing. I also still beat 10 jack, 10 9, 10 queen, things like that my opponent might do this with. As well as there are some draws on board, 5 6, 8 9, all reasonable candidates that I'm ahead of. And if worse comes to worse, I do have a backdoor flush draw to fall back on. So for only $210 more, I'm definitely going to make the call on this one, and we are off to a run out.
Alright guys, one more action.
Well, the 7 pairing river's pretty bad. If my opponent was blasting off with like ace 7 or something, that just got there. But no, he has ace 10. Just barely pipped on this one. And we start this session doubling a player up.
It's frickin' freezing in here, Mr. Bigglesworth.
Next hand of note. With 1 limp, an early position player raises to $15. Very small considering there's a limp. But regardless, when it folds to me, I'm in the big blind with ace queen offsuit. Definitely gonna 3-bet this one. I definitely want to build a pot. Even playing out of position, ace queen is a good candidate to 3-bet with. I make it $50. Well, only the pre-flop aggressor decides to call. And the flop is jack 8 7 all hearts. Kind of an interesting board. I do have the ace of hearts, which is quite relevant here. I think my opponent for raising and then calling is much more likely to have middling cards. So I don't really think that a single bet's going to get it through all too often. And having plenty of equity with the nut flush draw, 2 overcards, backdoor straight draw, I think this is a fine board to just check call and reevaluate based on the run out. So I check. My opponent decides to check it back, which I'm fine with. Turn is the queen of hearts, so we hit our flush immediately. It's always a nice feeling. Since there's 4 hearts on board and I have the ace, I don't see too many hands I can get value from, so I'm definitely going to bet very small, trying to get a crying call of a 2 pair or maybe a very small heart that my opponent may have. So I bet $25. My opponent decides to call. The river is a board pairing 8. Not something I'm super happy to see.
Cut me some frickin' slack.
Plenty of 2 pairs just improved to full houses, and then he sets now a full house. Kind of a dicey board, but I think it's unlikely my opponent had a 2 pair or a set. and would just check through the flop. Even though it's monotone, I think that most people go for some level of value. So we can't fold nut flushes because we're afraid of full houses. We're definitely going to go for some value here, especially when we kept the pot relatively small with a pot controlling check on the flop. I bet $75. My opponent thinks for about 15 seconds before just calling. So that's really good. I'm definitely have the best hand here if he just called. If facing a raise, it's a very tough spot. I probably have to fold depending on the sizing. So I happily show my hand. My opponent has 9-10 of hearts. He flopped a straight flush and didn't raise at any point in the hand. I guess I'm thankful for losing pretty much the bare minimum when it's straight flush and a nut flush. Whatever, we'll take it. So next hand of note. As I had been running pretty poorly in the last video and this video up till now, I decided not to top off. Having a max stack is good for scenarios where you're trying to cooler your opponents, and when in all in situations and you have the best hand, you get the maximum value for it. For example, if you got pocket aces and your opponent had pocket kings, you definitely don't want to only have a $300 stack. You want to have a $1,000 stack and get a full double up when you get a massive cooler such as that. But I have been running very poorly. All the coolers have been going the other way for me in the last few days, so I decided to just stay with a short stack, which has its own benefits, as you can more happily jam with speculative hands like flush draws and straight draws and just single pair hands, and put a lot of pressure on your opponent without risking too much money. So I keep the $300 stack. When there's a button straddle, one player decides to limp. I'm in the cutoff with pocket jacks. I'm definitely going to try to get stacks in with this hand. I probably wouldn't try to get it in with a full $800 or $1,000 stack pre, but 300 is pretty happy to get it in with. So I'm going to size pretty high up to try to get a good stack to pot ratio. I bet $55 pre-flop. The button decides to go all in. So we are happy to get it all in with pocket jacks here, and we are going to see a run out. YouTube will think it's funny.
Oh, I'll put that out after. No more action.
Queen high is not quite what you want to see, but besides that, it's a pretty safe board. And we're up against ace king. I can't be certain against my specific opponent in this hand that it all gets in anyway if my stack is larger. I would say the $300 stack definitely influenced the jam by my opponent. And we're back to about starting stack at least. Before I'm under the gun, I $10 straddle from under the gun here. Definitely going to straddle multiple spots. I definitely want to mix up, play some pots here, so happy to put the straddle on. Well, under the gun +1 calls the $10, and a late position player raises to 60. I have queen 10 of clubs. I think this is a fine hand to defend for $50 more. Plays relatively well. Suited one gapper. I'm definitely going to make the call for $50 more. Well, the under the gun +1 player decides to jam, so he limp jammed for $133 now. And ironically, the late position player that made it 60 just folds. So now the hand's a little bit different. There's not a whole lot of implied odds to make this call. It's only $73 to call to win $253. Getting about 3.5 to 1 on my money, so I'd say it's decent odds, pretty close. Even if my opponent has me drawing pretty thin with a hand like ace queen, I still have about 30% chance to win, so I'm getting pretty much the right price to call. So for $73 more, we are going to gamble and see the run out.
Don't mess with me, I'm one crazy moofoo.
Yeah, Jack King.
Queen 10. We are against ace 9, so we have about 40% chance to win. Flop is no good. Turn is no good. River is also no good. Ace 9 will be the winner with a limp jam. Dang it. Unlucky for me. Well, on the next hand of note, there is a button straddle. I'm in the big blind with ace king offsuit. I raise to $40. A middle position, late position, and the button decides to call. So we are 4 ways to a flop.
4 players.
Of king, jack, 8, 2 diamonds. And this is a board that's pretty good to bet small on. There's plenty of king X and jack X I'll call a bet, as well as queen 10 and some diamond draws. So pretty happy to bet small here, even into multiple people. I bet $50. Well, 2 players decide to fold, but the button decides to come along. When the turn is the 6 of clubs, I definitely have to size up a little bit bigger here. There are now 2 flush draws I need to protect against, and I can still get called by hands such as king queen, which are drawing very thin. So I bet $150, and to this bet, my opponent decides to fold, and we take a win. Definitely feels good to win when you're running less than ideally.
Sounds good.
So next interesting hand. It folds all the way to the cutoff, who makes it 20. I wish I was button straddling this hand, but I unfortunately was not. When I look down at ace-king offsuit again, definitely going to 3-bet this one at least. I make it 70, hoping to get it heads up against the cutoff in position. But to my surprise, the big blind goes all in for 500, and then it folds back to me. This is a spot I'm not super excited about at this point, because several sessions that were off stream leading up to this, I had ace-king all in against aces 2 different times. Not a fun feeling. I'm not sure how often this particular opponent has less than pocket queens when they just jam. Either way, we're going to trust the process and try not to be results oriented. We're going to call the all in with ace-king and hopefully get a good run out. We could definitely use one.
Good luck, sir.
550.
I'll buy his beer when you bring mine back. No, I'll buy your beer when she comes back.
All right, no more action.
Cheers.
Oh, you guys don't go twice a day at least. I got ace king, bro.
Well, queen high is the worst board imaginable because I hope my opponent can have ace queen sometimes.
Either way, it's bad.
So that's quite disappointing to see. And we brick the rest of the run out, feeling pretty bad. But my opponent announces that he also has ace king. So we get an anticlimactic chop. We still chop 20 bucks. So a final hand of note. Unfortunately, I did not get the camera on till a little bit deep into the action, which occurred because I have pocket kings and I did not want to do a tell when I'm button straddling and actually pick up a massive hand and would like to just win money. Either way, here we go. I button straddle. Under the gun makes it $35. The cutoff calls. I'm on the button, and I'm definitely going to 3-bet this one. Definitely a lot of dead money out there, and we definitely want to build a pot when we have pocket kings and we're on the button. So I 3-bet to $110. Well, the big blind calls the 110. Very surprised to see that. The under the gun player calls the 110. And then the cutoff goes all in. Well, that's a move you don't see very often. The cutoff has no indication that I'm going to raise or anyone else is, so I think it's very unlikely he has a good hand where he would just call 35 and then decide to jam. So my opponent jams for 13.45. I really believe he's just taking a hand like pocket eights or something and trying to get the $300 of dead money. It's a very ridiculous move. But either way, we're going to tank for a little bit, maybe get a third player involved behind us before calling. And now that we've gotten all the money in now for a nearly $3,000 pot, we are definitely going to sweat this run out together. Well, 779 is an excellent flop. Very happy to say about pocket kings. Second 9, also a very good card. Unlikely he has pocket 9s or pocket 7s now. And the river is an ace.
Ace, king.
You win. And my opponent has ace king. This one definitely hurts. It stings pretty hard. Honestly, not really because of the result, but really just how my opponent decided to play his hand. I mean, ace king is a fine 3-bet candidate.
I heard that somewhere.
When it goes 35 and he 3-bets and I 4-bet, maybe he just calls, maybe he 5-bets and we get it in. That's pretty standard. But maybe when I 4-bet, he sees that board and I pound it, he might just give up. The money was likely going to get in regardless, but in this unorthodox way my opponent played his hand, it definitely caused the absolute most pain for me.
Ow! You shot me, you a-hole!
After this hand, I really hadn't been playing too long, but I just knew I was not in a good mental headspace to continue. It's good to be able to identify that and not try to push yourself to get back to even. Some days just hit a big hand that's an L, and it's good to just walk away and play another day. But for this 2-5 no limit hold'em session, I'm into the game for $800, out of the game for $105. That is a loss of $695 across 6 hours, which equates to $115 an hour or 23 big blinds an hour. It is a bummer to book 2 L's in a row, but it's alright. We will definitely get them next time. If you have made it all the way to this point, thank you. I appreciate it. Please consider subscribing. It helps me out a great deal, and we will see you all next week.